Welcome to the studio of the Council of Europe in the capital of the Europeans, Strasbourg. I've invited you, Madame, President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, to ask you a few questions about your activities throughout the last 2 years. You're leaving the post by New Year, but let me start by asking you, what are you wearing?
Well, I'm wearing a pink ribbon, and that pink ribbon shows it's in fact a campaign which starts on the 1st of October each year, and it lasts the whole month of October, and it's an awareness-raising campaign in all countries about breast cancer. And so many women, but also some men, are suffering of it, and is really to raise awareness that more prevention has to be done, but also even more research, even if progress has been made in that field. And I really wanted to wear it on the 1st of October to tell national parliamentarians to go back to their capitals and also to support the actions taken in the different countries.
Actually, I thought it was some kind of an order. Have you received in your position as a president some recognitions, national?
No, because during my national career, of course, but not as a president of the Parliamentary Assembly, because our rules, our code of conduct say clearly that you cannot accept a national declaration because of the conflict of interest. So I think that is fine. But we have other declarations, and I'm very proud to show you this. This is No Hate Parliamentary Alliance we are having, because we see so many hate speech, intolerance all over Europe, and increasing, and especially now linked to the migration drama. And so we must really be aware and prevent it, because we have to have a red line beyond which you can't go, and not only amongst parliamentarians, and I try to convince a lot of people to join it, but also religious leaders. And I had the great honor to be received a fortnight ago by His Holiness the Pope Francis, and he supports our campaign, as well as other people, and I'm very proud to do this, and I think we have to continue to say no hate.
Can you reveal just a little bit about your conversation with the Pope?
Oh yes, I do. He came here to the Parliamentary Assembly on the 25th of November, and his message was very strong. And he is a fantastic personality, and we need a moral authority, and that has nothing to do with religion.
In which way was he strong?
Well, he is strong. His message, when he addressed the Parliamentary Assembly last November, he said, "Europe, where are you? Where is your energy?" And I think he's right. And referring to the migration issue, he spoke about the globalization of indifference. And I took that up, and I said, last year, we had a globalization of indifference. This year, we have even a globalization of rejection, and we must come next year, at the latest, to a globalization of solidarity and responsibility.
That's just his aim as well.
Yes, and we discussed about that, but also about demography, about climate change, about youth unemployment, which is really terrible, and if young people don't have a perspective. So that is important, and his message is so strong, and we also saw it now at the UN, and I think it's really important that he, at the US, when he addressed the Congress at the US, in the United States, and I think we can be lucky to have such a moral authority.
And that leads me directly to the first question regarding your job as a president. Where do you think you had some kind of influence on what's going on in Europe?
Well, when I took over 2 years ago, the world was not perfect, but much better than it is today. And we see really a decline in all sorts of relations. But I think that the added value of the Parliamentary Assembly is that it is a platform of dialogue between parliamentarians, but it gave me also the opportunity to speak to members of governments, and also, even if it is difficult and even if you disagree, what is important is to maintain contact and to maintain the dialogue, because violence can never be an answer. And I really was outspoken when it comes, for instance, to intolerance and hate. We have to say no. And when I look at the situation of human rights in certain countries where human rights defenders cannot register, you have NGOs, there are laws to forbid NGOs, or at least to make them life very difficult. You have human rights defenders who are in prison, and there we have to work to be outspoken, but on the same time talk to the authorities in order to change those systemic problems.
But can you change?
I never give up. I think if you don't do anything, it would be worse. And there is the added value of the Council of Europe, because the Council of Europe was founded in 1949 after World War II by 10 countries, because they understood that after World War I they stopped the war, but they didn't have the basis to have peace. And so that's why this organization has been founded, and now we have 47 countries, and all those 820 million citizens of those 47 countries are protected by the Convention on Human Rights.
Yes, Madam.
And that is the most important.
May I interrupt you here?
Yes.
Because the aim of the founders was clearly, they had a vision that Europe should be united in some kind of way to avoid war. No doubt about that. Is there any kind of vision at the moment when you see that not even the foreign ministers who should be forming the committee of ministers here at the Council, the highest body, not turn up anymore?
Well, they turn up, of course, once a year. There is a meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, and I am invited to join them. I was there on the 19th of May this year, and that gave me the occasion to have very good contact. And each year, each 6 months, you have another country taking over the chairmanship. And there I have very close relations with the Ministers of Foreign Affairs. So I saw many of them, and for instance in May I spoke to Mr. Lavrov when they had the ministerial conference. So I have the opportunity also to speak to ministers, even if they are represented in Strasbourg by their deputies, by ambassadors.
But you must admit that it is not the number one item to be discussed at national levels what the Council of Europe is doing.
I agree completely with you, and I think it's the task of the members of the Parliamentary Assembly to go home to their national parliaments in order to discuss the issues we are discussing here. It's not enough to vote here for resolutions or to vote against them, but it is really our task to take that back. And I give you one example, that is the migration issue. We had a number of discussions, a number of resolutions. I went in April to Turkey, to the Syrian border, and I saw several camps, seeing that Turkey was hosting 2 million refugees, spending $6 billion, and the international contribution was just 400 million. So I thought, what can I do? And we took the initiative then to take the leaders of the national delegations to Turkey, to the Syrian border, and then to report back home. And that had really an effect, because you have to see, in order, if you just read reports, it's numbers, but if you see what happens, you have another approach to it, and then to convince national parliaments. And we hope that in national parliaments they are now pushing the governments to take action. And I think concerning the migration, and I said it in my opening speech, we are now reacting, but we could have had actions before and anticipating, because the conflict in Syria, for instance, that has been going on for nearly 5 years. So we could see what was coming up, but now there was a certain reaction also in the EU. But I'm not happy how the discussion was made, because they were haggling like carpet sellers. And it's not about carpets, it's about human beings and their dignity. And I think the Council of Europe is really there to recall us that human rights must be respected, whether it's a national or a non-national, whether it's an asylum seeker, whether it's a refugee, and that they have to be protected by the Convention on Human Rights.
Excellent said, Madam. But the OSCE has a similar body in Warsaw dealing with. They have even a Parliamentary Assembly. We have assemblies all over in common European organizations. Why is it necessary to have the Council of Europe today?
The OSCE has another mandate. They are there for the security. And that's not within our mandate, but you can't have security without human rights. So, of course, they are dealing with human rights as well, but focusing on security questions. And I must say that I have very, very good relations with the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, and I met the president recently, 3 weeks ago. We are having contacts regularly over the phone, and I think it's important to have those good contacts. I have good contacts with Martin Schulz, the president of the European Parliament as well. We have to coordinate and not to see ourselves as competitors, but to coordinate what we are doing, and that what is important is to have good personal relations with the people in charge, and not only institutional links.
Final question. When you look a little bit ahead,
Yeah.
Are you having a vision for the Council of Europe?
I think the Council of Europe is more important than ever. The Council of Europe, when it was enlarged by the new countries in the 90s, up to 47 countries, then we had a lot of hope that every country would very quickly be a full-fledged democracy. We see now that that is not so easy, and we have to understand it, because those countries have a history, have a culture. It took, and I come from Luxembourg, it took so much time, because before we could have a really full-fledged democracy, and we have to work for it every day. We can't take it for granted. For those countries, it's difficult, but we could see that there was progress every day. Now we see, and in the last decade, some people thought, well, why do you still need the Council of Europe? And it was seen as a waiting room to have access to the EU. But no, it isn't that. We are a different body, and some countries never are going to join the EU, and that's fine. But now, if I see the state of human rights in different countries, I think that the Council of Europe is more needed than ever. It would be good if we didn't need any convention, and if everybody would really treat the other and in dignity. But that's yes. So we need that convention, and I think that now the Council of Europe is more needed than ever.
Behind you, I can see you are needed, because they have to start the meeting. Yes. May I thank you for this opportunity to learn more about the Council of Europe.
Well, thank you very much for your interest. Thank you so much.